Hey guys, Heretic U here, and today we are going to revisit a series I did about a year ago called How to Play Blood Bowl Start to Finish, which is ironic because I never finished the series. And since I figured, I had released a couple of Blood Bowl videos for 2013, I thought, why not and pick up where the series left off. Now today I think I ended at part 9 and we were getting into rerolls. So we bought our team. Now we're buying the basic box set, just to remind you guys. Not the best buy for your human team, but we're gonna somehow make this work. So we got 6 linemen. We got 2 catchers, 2 throwers, and 2 blitzers in the back there. And altogether, I think that's 760 points. And so we could actually buy 4 team rolls. These are 50k each, and have some money left over in the treasury. We could buy an assistant coach or a cheerleader or something. Team rerolls are really important, especially when you are first learning the game, because you're going to make. I think the most common mistake is you're going to take risks, and those risks will turn into turnovers. And so what these team rerolls do is allow you to sort of take a mulligan. And we're also, let's see if I can cram this in onto one video. This is a quick update. Now, when we first started the series, we were playing against the Skaven, but since I won this team at the West Coast Quake and got them painted up, now these are just the quick paint jobs, just slapping some paint on. I thought it'd be cool if we use my new Lizardman team as part of some of the examples, okay? And so for this video, it might go a little bit long, but I thought we would cover rerolls real quick, and we'll move into some basic tactics for you guys. And eventually, we're gonna go into playing an entire game, all right? So let's get started. So rerolls sound like they're pretty basic. There are a couple of rules to rerolls that as a new player you have to take note. For example, in Blood Bowl, you can never reroll a reroll. For example, let's just do this. We have this catcher attempting to dodge out of this Saurus's tackle zone. Now, if I fail the first dodge, right, let's say, well, darn dice, let's say I roll 2. Now, I can use the dodge skill and re-roll that. And I failed. That's pretty good. This is perfect for our example. I could not then burn a team re-roll and re-roll that. So you can never re-roll a re-roll. You can't re-roll, for example, let's say this Saurus is putting a hit on our little catcher guy, and get some better. Say I roll both down, and I roll on the catcher's armor as the Lizardman player. I can't use my rerolls, my team rerolls, to reroll the armor or injury rolls. They just don't allow it. So that's pretty much what bounds the rerolls. The other thing is, this actually came up in a tournament. For example, if let's say I am throwing the ball, declaring a pass with my passer, my thrower. God, you can tell it's been a long time since I've done this. And I get an interception attempt with that Saurus, who would need a 6. I couldn't burn a team reroll to reroll that. It's not my turn, so I can only use the team rerolls during my turn. So that in a nutshell is rerolls. So just a couple of rules to them. Otherwise, they're pretty straightforward. You know, you burn a team reroll whenever you feel like you failed something and you want to prevent that turnover. For example, if I was rolling this blitzer on that Saurus, he is strength 3, the Saurus is strength 4. I'm gonna roll, I'm gonna do something dangerous and roll what is known as the uphill, 2 uphill, meaning the enemy player gets to pick. This was actually a good example of that. I could choose to re-roll this at this point, even though the Lizardman player has preference of the dice. If I was unhappy with these results, actually these are kind of perfect for what happened, but if I was unhappy with them, I could roll them again and have the guy pick, and of course he would pick attacker down and roll on my armor. So that's pretty much re-rolls in a nutshell. Okay, so basically we went over the very basics of the game, how action works. We bought a team. We even purchased rerolls and went over how rerolls work. I think it's time we graduated into some basic tactics, and one of the first tactics that I feel as a new player you should at least know about or employ is the cage. So what is a cage? How does it work? And ultimately, how to defend against it. So the basic idea of the cage is that you are a player on offense is going to protect the ball carrier, and he's going to form a cage around his ball carrier so that it be almost next to impossible to take out the ball carrier. So the first cage that we're looking at is the classic. This is your 4-point cage, okay? And as you can see here, a player would have to make a serious dodge roll to attack that ball carrier. And even if he manages to make the dodges, the ball carrier is going to have at least 2 assists. So the 4-point cage is the optimum cage to protect your guys. Okay, so this is the 3-point cage. This is when you just, maybe you don't have enough players or your players are out of position to form a 4-point cage. Obviously this is not as good because they're still, like for example, this guy can get at this ball carrier and not even have to roll for a dodge. So the way this works is you want to kind of predict where the blitz is going to come from and point the Y towards that. Okay, but even though it's not as effective as a 4-point cage, the cool thing about this cage is, you know, I'm still getting assists on this block. So even say this Saurus, right, who's strength 4 is attacking my ball carrier who's strength 3. I'm still getting assist from the blitzer in front and the guy in the back. If I try to attack him from this angle, that's going to be an incredibly impossible dodge to make, getting into there. It's possible, but it's going to take a 6-up And so even that high roll is not enough. The last cage I want to show you guys is the sideline cage. Now this is kind of a risky one. But you can see I'm only using 4 players to form this cage. And the idea is that the remaining points of the cage is actually the out of bounds area. What makes this dangerous is that the ball carrier is right next to the out of bounds area. So there are ways to kind of block them in and maybe push him into the crowd, which is always the most dangerous thing you can do to your opponent. But still, it's not bad. It's not a bad play. I've used it a couple of times, and what it does is sort of forces everybody to come in and try to box in your ball carrier. And as long as you have a scoring option maybe out in the other wing, and you can block your way out of that. Let's say they try to box you in like this. If you can block your way out, right? Then you've successfully drawn the majority of the defenders in one area, and ideally your scoring option, your pass option, is either left alone or only has to make like a single dodge to score. Okay, so now that we discussed cages from an offensive standpoint, I think it's only fair to sort of end this video on how in the heck do we defend this cage. And as we can see, the lizardmen have a pretty strong cage here. Each source is strength 4, and even if the little guy is strength 2 in the middle, he's gonna get at least 2 assists if we try to jump in there. The one thing you have to understand about cages is that the opposing player is going to try to eat up as much clock as possible. So when trying to defend the cage, one of the things I like to think of is trying to pressure the cage and trying to make the guy score as soon as possible. That's one approach to beating the cage. The other possibility is delaying him to the point where he won't score. And this is quite possibly the best way to do this. Now, it's a little unfair because I'm using 6 of my humans versus 5 of the lizardmen, but this is the idea that you want to come up with. And the basic premise is this. We know from earlier videos that you can only have 1 blitz move. So the most important thing about this delay tactic is that none of these columns of 2 players each is actually touching an opposing player. Because if it were, for example, I have a Croxagore here, on the lizardman turn, he'd get a free block at that guy and an additional blitz. So I could blitz here and take out that column and reform my cage. As it stands, the way it is now, realistically, he can only move his cage 1 square. Even if he tries to move at a diagonal, it would still put him maybe 1 square closer. So at this rate, he wouldn't be able to, depending on what turn it is, the idea is to not allow him enough movement to actually get to the end zone by turn 8. Therefore, either making him come up with a new play, busting out of the cage, and going with some other option, which is just as effective, if you ask me, as breaking the cage. Now, the other thing to note about this particular defensive setup is we have columns of guys, and they are 2 squares apart. They're using the maximum space for their tackle zones. So you have a tackle zone here and tackle zone there, tackle zone there, there. So the opposing player is going to have to make some crazy dodges to get through this. Obviously, this would probably be the worst route. So trying to run down the sidelines is, you could end up with a possible chance where the humans could actually knock your ball carrier out of bounds. So you want your guys in columns of two squares apart. And that'll restrict movement on that cage. That's the delay tactic. Now to break the cage, if you're feeling a little frosty, because we're starting with brand new teams here, most of the tactica would suggest, skilling up a player that's, suitable for breaking the cage. And for purposes of this video, I don't want to get into specific skill sets because I just feel that as a new player, we're not there yet. So we're going to try to break this cage with just our basic box set. And we have to assume that the lizardmen are also not skilled up. So again, this is probably not your idea setup, but if I were going to attempt to do it, you'd want to blitz a corner off of the cage and put a tackle zone or as many tackle zones on that ball carrier. So, I'd start by moving this guy here and maybe moving this guy here. And of course I want to blitz with my blitzer because he has the block skill. And now I have 2 assists, thus giving me 2 dice. So I got a both down and a push. Fortunately, we used our blitzer because he has block. He uses the block skill. The Saurus does not. He goes down. We get to roll armor. Oh, wow. This was better than I expected. So we punched armor. Can we finish the job? Can we get him off the pitch? We do. Holy crap. So we take out 1 point of the cage. The blitzer still has movement left over. So I could end in the guy's tackle zone. And I could actually, start reforming the columns and maybe force the guy to go down the sideline. At least go that way, because this way would be kind of difficult. And that's called putting pressure on the cage. So now he has to commit and start doing something. Ideally they're going to try and free up the ball carrier. But that's how you bust a cage. So on our next video, I don't know, I'll come up with some other some more basic tactics to come up. Screening, we'll go over screening. I think that's important. So I'll see you on the next one. Oh yeah, also thanks for watching. Yeah, that too.